it's Wade with Learn Easy Guitar Tunes. Today we're going to tackle the 5 most common strums that I think that you should learn as a beginner and maybe even an intermediate. These are different strums that are going to take you to a different level. If you're a beginning player and you've tackled most of your open chords, but strumming seems to be an issue with you, this is the perfect lesson for you. You've already got your chords down, now you just need to get that other hand down so that you have a little bit more rhythm. The 5 strumming patterns I'm going to teach you today are going to slowly build off of each other and slowly get a little bit more and more complex. Now for this lesson, we're not going to concentrate on what chord. I'm just going to play an E chord down here so you don't have to look at the chord. All we need to do is just concentrate on the strumming hand. And for you, you don't even have to play a chord. You can simply lay your hands across the neck and just mute whenever we're going through these strumming patterns. The first strumming pattern we're going to go through is actually going to deal with just quarter notes, whereas all the rest of the lessons after that on the strumming patterns are going to deal with eighth notes. So the difference between quarter notes and eighth notes is if you have 4 beats within a measure, 1, 2, 3, 4, that would be quarter notes because you're going to have a strum on every one of those. But on eighth notes, you're going to go in between the beats and it's going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... I'm going to make this very easy for you on each one of the strumming patterns. Down below, you're going to have a diagram that's going to lay out exactly what those patterns are that you can follow. So let's tackle the first lesson. The first one seems very, very easy because all it is just downstrokes and it's just quarters. But it's very, very essential to your playing because if you can't master the easy stuff, you're never going to be able to master the harder stuff. And you can tell on the diagram below that the downstrokes are represented by what looks like a U. So on this pattern, you can see that every one of these strokes is going to be a downstroke. I know this may sound very easy, but it's essential that you watch until the very end. This first pattern is going to be like this. So let's go ahead, grab your guitar, let's go ahead and see how this sounds with the metronome and play along. One thing to focus on this pattern is your timing. Since it's so much slower and it's just downstrokes, this is an easy one to make sure that you stay in beat with that metronome. The other thing it's going to allow you to do is to work on what's called dynamics. Dynamics are the ability to be able to play softer and play louder. And it's a natural tendency that when players play quieter, they tend to slow down. When they tend to get louder, they tend to speed up. So this will actually afford you the opportunity to try and work on those dynamics by having that metronome keep you in beat. Let's take a listen to how that sounds. Remember, as we go through these strumming patterns, don't lock your wrist. We don't want to be rigid. We want to be nice and fluid so that we flow across the strings. Relax and get a little bit of wrist motion in there. It doesn't come from the elbow, it comes from the wrist. All right, we're up to strumming pattern number 2. And strumming pattern number 2 is exactly like strumming pattern number 1, except we're going from quarter notes to eighth notes. Again, quarter notes were 1, 2, 3, 4, but now we're up to eighth notes, and that's going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and it's going to be all downstrokes. Again, take a look at the graph down here at the bottom, and you'll see where you've got the ands. Now you've got a downstroke in between each one of the numbers. And let's take a listen to how that sounds. This pattern will help you on the accented beats, and it's important that you learn how to count out loud, but if you want, you can count inside your head. Strum pattern 3 is just like strum pattern 2, except now what we're going to do is we're going to do upstrokes. So every time we come down, then we're going to come right back up. This will also be an eighth note, so we'll do the 1 and 2 and 3 and. If you take a look at the pattern below, you'll now see what looks like an arrow. And the arrow, which is pointing down, is actually representing what would be an upstroke. So we're basically going to be just coming back and forth and making sure that that wrist is going to be loose and not rigid. One thing to note, and I've mentioned this before in my videos, is most people think that whenever you do an upstroke that you have to strum all of the strings. In reality, you only need to strum the first 3 or 4 strings that are on the bottom. And this will actually make your playing a little bit easier instead of having to concentrate so much on going all the way down and all the way up. Let's take a listen at how this strumming pattern is going to sound. Once again, I encourage you to play this pattern with a metronome, and once you get this pattern down, it will serve you well in the future as you play more. Strum pattern 4 is just like strum pattern 3, except we're going to add a little bit of spice to it. This time we're going to do what's called a muted strum. Now you may have seen one of my lessons on here. I do have a lesson that's called slap strumming, and it's the same technique. Basically what you're going to do is you're going to go down, up, slap, down, up, slap. When using a muted strum, what you're trying to do is you're trying to emulate the drum beat. And it's also going to give you a little bit more rhythm. It sounds very, very interesting. Let me show you an example of how that sounds. All of your muted strums will all be on downstrokes, and they're controlled by what's called the palm or the meat of your hand. And the way you achieve this is, just as you're getting ready to come down on the chord, your palm mutes it right beforehand. So on this pattern, we will do the 1 and, but you will mute on 2 and 4. As you can see in the diagram below, the mutes are represented by X's. Those are where you're going to mute the strings. Don't be afraid to try this technique really slow, but this also gives you the opportunity to really dig into that mute, because you really want it to come through. Let's take a listen on how this sounds with the metronome. It's important to note that you may need to really grip your pick a little bit tighter. You don't want it going flying across the room, so you may have to adjust the way that you hold your pick. Finally, we have strum pattern number 5, and it's just like the previous ones that we're doing the 8th notes, except on this pattern, we're going to rest on a beat. This may not make a lot of sense to you, but once we start doing it, it'll all come to light. If you look at the diagram here, you'll notice that there's no cymbals on certain spots of this strum pattern. That represents what is going to be rests. On those rests, you're still going to actually act like you're going through the motion, but you're really not going to strum. Each one of those rests will actually land on an and beat. Some of the beats that will be rested on are going to be the upstrokes. So this pattern is actually like the previous one, except it has the rest. It'll be kind of like... But let's go ahead and put it with the metronome and let's see exactly what that sounds like. Just like previous patterns, it's important to stay relaxed and concentrate on your timing. And those are what I feel are the 5 essential strumming patterns that you need to learn. I know you may get a little bit frustrated with doing this, but I encourage you to work through each one of them. You may only be able to get to the first one, and then eventually you're going to have to start working on the second one. But the good news is, as you learn these, you're going to be able to play some of the songs that are your favorites instead of just playing just chords that don't mean anything. You can actually play along with songs that you've been listening to your entire life. I encourage you that when you go through these, that you give yourself the opportunity to add your own personality, to add your own flavor to what would be your personality. And again, it's always good to take these lessons and apply them to real music. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. I hope this is something that will help you move from one level to another level and actually enable you to play a little bit more songs. Thanks for watching.